The chandeliers glowed like captured suns, spilling golden light across the long dining table inside the mansion. Silverware clinked, crystal glasses rang with laughter. At the far end, Victor Hale, a billionaire CEO with a voice sharp as glass, leaned back in his leather chair. He liked his world polished, perfect, without a single flaw. Beside the table, holding a tray of folded napkins, stood Lila, the black nanny who had raised his daughter for nearly 7 years. Her presence was quiet, respectful, yet her soft Caribbean accent slipped through as she leaned toward the girl. "Sweetheart, would you like some more juice?" The words floated gently, but Victor's eyes narrowed. He chuckled, loud enough for every guest to hear. "Juice? Or should I say juice? My God, after all this time in America, and you still sound like that." A ripple of laughter moved across the table. Nervous, some forced. Lila's hands tightened around the tray, but her eyes stayed calm. She didn't answer. Victor turned back to his guests. "You see, I invest in voice coaches for my executives, but my own household staff sounds like a tourist fresh off the plane. Isn't that rich?" The men in suits laughed harder. One woman sipped her wine, pretending not to hear. Then a small voice cut through the noise. "Daddy, don't!" Silence dropped heavy. All eyes shifted to the little girl sitting halfway down the table. Emma, only 8, had set her fork down. Her cheeks flushed, but her gaze was steady, locked on her father. "She doesn't sound wrong," Emma said. Her small hands gripped the edge of the table. "She sounds like home." The tray in Lila's hands trembled, just slightly. Victor's smile froze. Guests exchanged uneasy glances. The sound of dripping water from the ice bucket filled the room like thunder. No one dared laugh now. Victor's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile, trying to reclaim the room. "Kids say the funniest things," he muttered, swirling the wine in his glass. Emma didn't look away. "She taught me my first lullaby," the girl said, her voice steady, soft yet sharp enough to cut through the silence. "Her voice is the one that makes me feel safe when I wake up scared." The guests shifted in their seats. The weight of Emma's words pressed against the glittering walls of the dining hall. One of the executives cleared his throat. Another glanced at his watch, pretending to check the time. Lila stood rooted to the spot, her eyes lowered, but inside her chest her heart pounded. She hadn't expected Emma to defend her, not like this. Victor finally set down his glass. "Enough, Emma," he said, his tone low, warning. But Emma pressed on. "Why do you laugh at her, Daddy? You never laugh when she reads to me, or when she sings." Her small face flushed, but she didn't falter. For the first time all evening, Victor had no clever retort. His lips parted, then closed again. The nanny stepped forward carefully, placing the tray on the sideboard. "It's all right, Miss Emma," she whispered, her accent wrapping the words in warmth. "Let's not trouble your father's evening." But the child shook her head. "It is trouble when people are mean." The words hit harder than any of Victor's boardroom battles. A child's honesty, impossible to outmaneuver. At the far end of the table, one guest finally broke the silence with a nervous laugh. Quickly smothered when no one joined in, Victor rose from his chair, pushing it back against the marble floor with a scrape that echoed. "Dinner is over," he said abruptly. "Thank you all for coming." His voice carried command, but not conviction. The guests stood, murmuring awkward goodbyes as they drifted toward the door. Emma stayed seated, her little hand reaching instinctively for Lila's. The nanny took it gently, a quiet strength in her touch. In that moment, it was clear to everyone still watching. The billionaire's empire might have been built on money and power, but the little girl's world, the one that mattered most, was built on the voice he had just mocked. Victor's eyes flickered toward them, and for the first time in years, he looked uncertain. The mansion grew quiet after the last car pulled away. The echo of closing doors faded, leaving only the low hum of the chandelier lights. Victor stood by the window, one hand gripping the edge of the curtain, staring out at the sweeping driveway as if the night air might offer him answers. Behind him, soft footsteps approached. Lila guided Emma upstairs, her voice a gentle stream. "Come now, little one. It's past bedtime." But Emma pulled back, looking up at her father. "Daddy," she said, "why do you treat her like that?" Victor turned, caught between anger and something heavier he couldn't name. "Emma, you don't understand." "No," she interrupted, surprising him. "You don't understand. She's the one who stayed with me when you were always gone." The words landed like stones. Lila gave Emma's shoulder a soft squeeze. "Enough, darling," she whispered, her accent tender, protective. "We'll talk tomorrow." Emma finally let herself be led away, but her eyes lingered on her father's face, full of disappointment no child should ever carry. Victor poured himself another drink once the footsteps faded upstairs. The liquor burned, but it didn't clear his mind. His reflection in the tall glass window stared back at him. Powerful suit, polished shoes, and yet tonight diminished. He thought of the laughter at the table. How quickly it had died when Emma spoke. How the guests looked at him, not as the untouchable mogul, but as a man exposed. For the first time in years, he felt small. Down the hall, Lila tucked Emma into bed. She hummed softly the same lullaby she had sung since the child was a baby. Her accent colored every note, rich and grounding. Emma's eyes fluttered shut with a smile. Standing in the doorway, Victor watched unnoticed. The song curled around him like a memory he didn't want to admit he missed. Something unpolished, something real. His hand tightened on the doorframe. Pride kept him silent, but a crack had opened inside him. And through that crack, something unfamiliar slipped in. Doubt. Would he face it tomorrow, or bury it under his empire? The night offered no answer. Morning light bled into the mansion through tall glass windows. Victor sat at the breakfast table, untouched coffee steaming in front of him. His mind replayed Emma's words over and over, like a loop he couldn't shut off. The sound of soft footsteps broke his trance. Lila entered quietly, her uniform crisp, her movements composed. She began arranging Emma's school bag near the door, speaking little. Victor cleared his throat. "Lila." She paused, glancing at him. "Yes, sir?" His fingers tapped the porcelain cup. "About last night." Her face stayed calm, but her eyes carried a storm she'd long learned to hide. "You don't need to explain, Mr. Hale. I know my place." The words stung more than he expected. "Do you?" he asked, trying to regain control. Lila met his gaze fully for the first time. "Yes. My place has always been by your daughter's side. Through her fevers, her nightmares, her joy. She knows my voice because it never left her." Victor's jaw tightened. "And what, you think I haven't been there?" She didn't flinch. "I think you've been everywhere but here." The air thickened. He wanted to dismiss her, to cut her words down with the same cold precision he used in the boardroom. But her voice, that accent he once mocked, carried truth too raw to ignore. Emma skipped down the stairs just then, breaking the tension. "Morning," she chirped, sliding into her chair. She looked between them, sensing the charged silence. "Is everything okay?" Victor forced a smile. "Of course, sweetheart. Eat your breakfast." But Emma frowned. She turned to Lila. "Did Daddy say sorry yet?" The question froze him. Lila quickly smoothed Emma's hair, murmuring, "Don't worry about that, darling. Eat." Victor swallowed hard. He had built an empire by never backing down, never showing weakness. Yet at this table, in front of a child and the woman he had belittled, silence felt like defeat. His daughter's eyes waited. Lila's gaze steadied him. For the first time, Victor felt cornered. Not by rivals, not by markets, but by his own reflection in the people who mattered most. And he wasn't sure he had the courage to answer. The city skyline glittered beyond the glass walls of Victor's office. From up here, the world looked obedient, small. Yet the words from his own dining table still echoed louder than any quarterly report. His assistant entered, dropping off a stack of folders. "Sir, the investors are expecting your speech tonight." Victor nodded absently, eyes distant. When the door closed, he leaned back in his chair, loosening his tie. He had mastered the art of control, of commanding every room. But at home, in front of an 8-year-old and a nanny, he had stumbled. That afternoon, he returned earlier than usual. The mansion felt different without the chatter of guests, quieter, more intimate. From the living room came the sound of piano keys, uneven, hesitant. Emma sat on the bench, her legs dangling. Beside her, Lila guided her small hands. "Gently now," Lila said, her accent weaving through the notes. "Every key has its own story. You must listen." Victor paused in the doorway. The same accent he had mocked now carried music through the house, binding child and caregiver in a rhythm he had never taken the time to learn. Emma noticed him first. "Daddy, did you hear? Lila's teaching me." Victor stepped forward. "I heard." His voice was softer than he intended. He turned to Lila. "Where did you learn?" Lila smiled faintly. My grandmother's church, back home. Music was our way of keeping hope alive. Something stirred in Victor. A memory of his own childhood before the mansions, before the empire. A mother humming in a cramped apartment. A voice with its own rough edges. He had buried that sound long ago. Emma beamed. Lila says voices carry history. Isn't that true, Daddy? Victor hesitated, caught between pride and the truth staring him in the face. Yes, he said finally. Voices do carry history. Lila's eyes flickered toward him, unreadable. For a moment, the three of them shared the same quiet space, bound by more than roles or titles. Yet beneath the calm, tension still simmered. Victor had not yet said the one word his daughter waited for, and until he did, the wound remained open. The next morning, Victor arrived at breakfast with an unusual burst of energy. Instead of the usual gray suit, he wore a tailored navy jacket, a color he reserved for speeches and charm campaigns. Emma glanced up from her cereal. Daddy, you're smiling weird. Victor chuckled, masking his nerves. I have a surprise. He snapped his fingers. Two delivery men entered the dining room carrying a gleaming black piano. Polished wood, golden pedals, a brand label that whispered exclusivity. They set it down carefully near the window. For you, Victor said, looking at his daughter. And for your lessons with Lila. Emma's eyes widened. It's beautiful. She ran over, pressing a key that sang bright and perfect. Victor turned toward Lila, waiting for a reaction. I thought it might make things easier, a proper instrument for her learning. Lila's face remained composed. Thank you, sir. It is generous. But something in her tone was distant, restrained. She guided Emma back to her chair. Victor frowned. You don't like it? Lila shook her head gently. It is not about liking. A new piano does not change the way you looked at me yesterday. The words stung, sharper than he expected. He opened his mouth to defend himself, to explain that this was his way of making amends. But Emma spoke first. Daddy, she said softly, you could buy 100 pianos, but you can't buy her voice. The silence after her words felt heavier than any boardroom defeat. Victor sank slightly in his chair. He had thought money could patch the fracture. Instead, it only revealed how deep it ran. Emma's small hand slipped into Lila's, her eyes full of quiet wisdom beyond her years. Victor watched, realizing painfully that his daughter saw something he had spent his life ignoring. Some things could only be mended with humility, and humility was the one currency he had never learned to spend. That evening, the mansion was unusually still. No guests, no clinking glasses, no deals to be made. Only the faint tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Victor stood at the threshold of the kitchen, watching Lila wash dishes. The soft hum of her song filled the air, the same lullaby Emma loved. He cleared his throat. Lila. She turned slightly, her eyes cautious. Yes, Mr. Hale. He stepped inside, the polished floor amplifying every footfall. I owe you a conversation. Her hands paused in the soapy water. She dried them slowly, then faced him, posture straight, ready for whatever storm he might bring. I'm listening, Victor exhaled, unused to the weight in his chest. I mocked you, in front of my guests, in front of my daughter. I told myself it was a joke, but it wasn't. It was cruel. The words felt foreign, like speaking a language he'd long forgotten. Lila studied him, her face unreadable. Why now? Why apologize after all these years? He swallowed. Because last night my daughter looked at me as if I were a stranger, and she was right to. She saw the truth, that I was smaller than the man I pretend to be. Silence stretched. The CEO who had bent markets to his will now stood waiting for the judgment of a nanny. Lila's voice softened, though her gaze stayed firm. I never asked you for riches, Mr. Hale. Only respect. That is the one thing a child sees more clearly than anything else. Victor's throat tightened. And I failed her. Failed you. Her expression shifted just slightly, the storm easing into something calmer. Words are a beginning, but Emma will not remember what you said at the table. She will remember what you do tomorrow. Victor nodded slowly, letting the truth settle. For once, there was no deal to close, no applause to chase. Only the fragile thread of trust he needed to rebuild. And for the first time in years, he realized, his daughter's love was not guaranteed. It was something he had to earn. The next morning, Victor didn't head to his office tower. Instead, he walked into the kitchen, still in shirt sleeves, no tie, no entourage. Lila nearly dropped the pan she was holding. Mr. Hale? I'll drive Emma to school today, he said simply. Emma's face lit up. Really, you never do that. Victor smiled faintly, ruffling her hair. Starting now, I will. The car ride was quiet at first. Emma swung her legs in the back seat while Lila sat beside her, surprised at the gesture. At a red light, Victor cleared his throat. Emma, he began, his voice unsteady, I want you to know, your nanny's voice is not something to laugh at. It's something to be proud of. Emma beamed. So you're saying sorry? Victor met Lila's eyes in the mirror. Yes, I am. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Lila gave a small nod, not full forgiveness, but acknowledgement, a step forward. That night, instead of locking himself in his office, Victor joined Emma and Lila at the piano. His large hands fumbled on the keys, but Emma laughed, guiding him. Lila's voice floated above the music, patient and warm. For the first time in years, the house sounded like more than a mansion. It sounded like home. Victor leaned back, watching his daughter's joy, the gentleness in Lila's eyes. Something in him shifted. Not all at once, but like a wall beginning to crack. He wasn't just a CEO here. He was a father learning, perhaps too late, the weight of humility. He turned toward the camera that Emma had left recording on her tablet, capturing the moment. A soft smile touched his face. If you're watching this, he said with a chuckle, don't forget to like and subscribe. You might just see how a man like me learns what really matters. Emma laughed, clapping her hands. See, Daddy can change. And for once, he believed her. The boardroom buzzed with the sharp energy of a quarterly meeting. Executives shuffled their papers, screens glowed with graphs, and the air smelled faintly of polished wood and power. Victor Hale entered, not with his usual commanding stride, but slower, almost thoughtful. Gentlemen, ladies, he greeted, taking his seat. His voice carried the same authority, but there was something new beneath it, restraint. Midway through the meeting, one of the younger managers stumbled over a presentation. His nervousness showed in the way his accent thickened with every sentence. A few executives smirked, ready to pounce. Victor raised a hand. Stop! The room froze. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on the young man. Keep speaking. Every voice here carries a story. And if you have a story worth hearing, I want it. Accent and all. A hush swept across the table. No one dared smirk again. The manager, stunned, regained his footing and continued, this time steadier, encouraged. When the meeting ended, Victor didn't rush out as usual. Instead, he lingered, shaking the manager's hand. Good work, he said firmly. Don't ever hide your voice. Later, alone in his office, Victor stared out at the skyline. He thought of Emma's proud smile, Lila's watchful eyes, the piano chords that still echoed in his mind. For the first time, he wondered if his empire could stand for something more than money. That evening at home, Emma rushed into his arms. Daddy, did you do it? Did you really listen to someone today? Victor kissed her forehead. I did. He glanced at Lila, who stood quietly at the doorway. And I'll keep doing it. For once, she didn't just nod. She smiled. A small, genuine smile that told him he was finally learning the language she had spoken all along, respect. A week later, the Hale mansion opened its doors. Not for another gala, but for something far simpler. The long dining table was gone, replaced with rows of chairs. Children from the neighborhood filed in, their parents trailing behind. A piano gleamed near the window, sunlight catching on its polished surface. Victor stood at the front, Emma's small hand tucked into his. Lila hovered nearby, her presence calm, steady. Thank you all for coming, Victor began, his voice carrying warmth that surprised even him. Tonight isn't about business, it's about voices, every single one of them. Too often I forgot how much they matter, but I've been reminded by the people closest to me. He gestured to Lila. She blinked, startled, as he invited her forward. This woman has been the backbone of my daughter's life. Her voice raised Emma when I was too busy raising profits, and I mocked it. Gasps rippled across the crowd. Victor didn't flinch. That shame is mine, but tonight I want you all to hear what I failed to honor. Lila hesitated, then stepped up. Slowly she began to sing, the lullaby Emma loved, her accent wrapping each note like a ribbon. The room fell into reverent silence. Children leaned forward, parents exchanged glances, some with tears in their eyes. Emma's face glowed with pride. "That's my Lila," she whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. When the song ended, the applause was thunderous. But what echoed loudest for Victor was his daughter's smile. Wide, pure, forgiving. He knelt down beside her. "Emma, thank you for teaching me." She hugged him tightly. "You just had to listen, Daddy." In that moment, surrounded by music and truth, the billionaire realized his greatest fortune wasn't in skyscrapers or boardrooms. It was in the voices he had once overlooked. And this time he vowed he would never laugh at them again. The story closes here, but the journey of change never really ends. If you felt the shift, if you believe in voices that matter, don't forget to like, go to subscribe, and share this story so more people can hear it too.